This is the grade 11 National Senior Certificate, Physical Science, paper 1, November 2016. We are going to go through with you question 2 of November 2016, grade 11. Okay, just want to write here question 2. Okay, just want to write question 2. Okay, now they say a heavy object is lifted using 2 ropes and 2 pulleys, as shown in the diagram below. The 2 pulleys are a distance x apart. The force Fa in rope A is 730 newtons and force Fb in rope B is 1440 newtons. Rope A makes an angle of 70 degrees with the horizontal, and rope B makes an angle of 10 degrees with the vertical. Okay, so now guys, let's just perform our analysis before we start doing any questions. We've got an object here, okay, of which is lifted. Okay, now this object, we know that it will experience a gravitational force. Okay, we know that the weight is mass times gravity. Okay, now this object will also experience tensions due to this force Fb and due to this force Fa. So now we need to label that. Okay. So now this is Fb and this is Fa, force A and force B. Okay. So now that's it. That's the free body diagram. Okay. Now in 2.1, they say define the term resultant vector. Now guys, a resultant vector is the sum of 2 or more vectors. Okay, it's a sum of 2 or more vectors. That's the resultant vector. It's the sum of 2 or more vectors. It's a sum of 2 or more vectors. Now 2.2, they say explain why the vector diagram of force Fa and force Fb and the weight will not be a closed vector diagram. Okay, now the reason why we say is not a closed vector diagram is because now this object is been lifted upwards. Okay, the object is being lifted upwards. That is why we cannot have a closed vector diagram. The object is in motion. The object is lifted upwards. Okay, now that is why we are not going to have a closed vector diagram. Now let us go to 2.3. Now in 2.3.1, they say calculate the vertical component of force Fa. Okay guys, now let us focus on this side. This is our force Fa. Okay, I'll just try to extend the line here and as well here. Okay, now guys, this is our horizontal component and this is our vertical component. Okay, so now this side of which is facing the angle, the angle of which is 70 degrees, we know it's going to be Fa times sine of theta. These are trigonometric ratios, guys. And now the side of which is not being faced by the angle is going to be Fa times cos of theta. Okay, so now the vertical component to our answer to our question here is going to be F vertical component. We just write it Fy. It's Fa times sine of theta. So now we know the force is 730 times sine of 70. Let us just punch this to get the answer. 730 times sine of 70. It's 685.98 newtons. Okay. Now let us go to 2.3.2. They say calculate the horizontal component. Now this is Fx is equal to Fa times cos of theta. So now Fa is 730 newtons times cos of 70. Okay, So we have 730 times cos of 70, and we get the answer to be 249.67 newtons. Okay, so now those were the answers to both the questions 2.3.1, 2.3.2. Now let us go to 2.4. In 2.4, they say calculate the maximum weight that force FA and force FB will be able to lift from the ground. Okay, now guys, the maximum force, okay, we know that F, okay, now guys, we are asked to calculate the maximum weight that force FA and force FB will be able to lift on the ground. Now remember guys, it is only the vertical components that will lift the object, okay, from the ground. It is only the vertical components. Now we've already got one vertical component of force FA. Now we need to get the second component of which of this force, of which is force FB. Okay, let me just extend the line here. Okay, now guys, this is our horizontal component and this is our vertical component, isn't it? So now our horizontal component is going to be FB sine of theta. Remember, the angle is facing this side. The vertical component is going to be FB cos of theta. So now we want the vertical component. This is the component that we want. So now we have Fy is equals to FB times cos of theta. So now we have 1440 times cos of 10 degrees. Okay, we'll punch that into our calculator. 1440 times cos of 10. Okay, then we're going to have 1418, okay, 0.12 newtons. Now guys, as I said earlier on, it is only the vertical components that will lift this object upward. So now that means we need to add these two vertical components to get the maximum weight that can be lifted. Therefore, we're going to say the maximum weight is equals to FAY plus FBY. Those are both the vertical components. So now we've got the answers. We know the first one is 685.98. We know the second one is 1418.12. So now we'll add this together. 685.98 plus 1418.12. Okay, we get the answer to be 2104.1 newtons. Okay, the maximum weight is newtons. Okay, so now guys, let us go to the last question, of which is 2.5. They say explain why the rope and the pulley system will be less effective if the distance x between the pulleys is increased. Now guys, if the distance is increased, the vertical components of the applied forces will decrease. Okay, remember, if we are going to increase this distance apart, we are going to increase this angle, we are going to reduce this one, and this will cause the vertical components to be what? To be weak, to be decreased, and this will cause the system not to pick up the object. So we'll write that down. If the distance x is increased, the vertical components will be weaker, and that may cause the system not to lift up the heavy object. Okay, so now guys, that was the end of our question, of which is question 2. Okay, we hope that we were helpful in understanding this question.